is no longer a sad journey that was done on purpose. Believe the words I say, here is the truth. Let's just pray it never happens to you. You knock on the door, you freeze in peril. You look around and there's nothing available. Panic, you scream, you run in circles. You knock on the door over. You look outside, the car's on the road. The police on the yard waiting in limbo. Your life is changing so fast, looking out the window. In just a moment and things will turn back. Prepare for the next part, it's real sad. Nothing turns out. They say hello sir, we need your daughter. I tell them no. They say you wanna, you run to us now. I tell them no way, go away, never come back. They answer with force and pin you down. They search all the rooms and look around. They find your baby girl. They tell me we got her. Now your family is torn apart, pleading your innocence from the start. Nobody listens, nobody cares. All you're left with is empty stairs. The house is empty, no love to be felt. They grabbed your baby, it's a feeling you never felt. You fight so hard to have her return. All they do is torture, you are feeling like burn. You do what they say, answer the question. They just keep telling you that you need lessons. You're not worthy of being a father. We don't want you to see your daughter. We don't know what you have done, but we'll say you're guilty, this has begun. We are taking your heart, your soul. You'll be alone now as you grow old. You are going away and die, no one will be there to cry. All by yourself, you can't do a thing. No one wants you around, no one believes you did nothing wrong. You gave your best fight, there was nothing you could do. I'll always remember the lonely December. You took my heart out for nothing. There was no reason for what was done. No one listened, not a one. As I lay dying on this bed, my visions are you running through my head. I'm sorry for nothing, I didn't do enough. I thought about you always, I didn't do enough. One day I'll be with you again, living in a world that you are in. Maybe that time I'll do it right, I'll be able to say goodnight. But for now, this life is over, there will be no more pain. I won't miss you in shame, I don't have to play this game. The unfair life that I was living, it's no memory, hope you can be forgiven. I had it all once, they took it all away. So good night, sweet princess, pleasant dreams. This is a story about a family who is no longer a sad journey that was done on purpose. As I tell you a story, I'm sorry if it seems a bit boring, but these are stories of fathers whose lives are being destroyed way too early. It all started when I opened my mouth, complaining about a stupid mistake. I knew better than to have more to say, I did it anyway. I'm a father and a husband, I'm no longer trusted. They have taken away the things I hold dear, making me realize my biggest fear. The foundation, it has crumbled, now there is tears where there was muscles. So now I waste away, missing my daughter as she tear looking at her smile. I won't see for a while. Now as days pass by, the tears have dried from my eyes. All that's left is the memories of that beautiful smile. So thank you for passing judgment. You people don't know nothing. To that little girl I was something, and you took it all away. So thank you for passing judgment. You people don't know nothing. To that little girl I was something, and you took it all away. Now my baby is grown up. Those people messed things up. I lost life's miracles there behind, with just a picture to remind me. Guilty of nothing. When I was a dad, I was something. These people passing judgment and have no right to say I'm a bad father, get away. This place no longer for you to stay. I don't want to see you here, never again will I hear. Hey daddy, come play with me. I need you to make some tea. I shed a tear looking at her smile. I won't see for a while. Now as days pass by, the tears have dried from my eyes. All that's left is the memories of that beautiful smile. So thank you for passing judgment. You people don't know nothing. To that little girl I was something, and you took it all away. So thank you for passing judgment. You people don't know nothing. To that little girl I was something, and you took it all away. Now my baby is grown up. Those people messed things up. I lost life's miracles there behind, but just a picture to remind me. Oh, now my baby is grown up. Those people messed things up. I'm so tired of living scared. I have to do something for me. I can't take the pressure, but I have to. No one will live my life for me. I need to know I'm better than this. That no one person who wronged me broke me. I was once a strong man, taking on everything in my path. When you took my daughter, you broke all I had. With that one action, you got my reaction. I threw my hands in the air, you quit. I try to pull myself together every day. I can't begin to rebuild because I'm so lost. I don't know how to get back the feeling, the one they stole that day. I was viewed as the protector, the strong and wise man to take control. I was put on a pedestal every day. When they took my daughter, they took all that away. I was the rock for my family. I made their dreams into reality. It was always up to me. Now my dreams are nightmares and I can't wake up. My wife laughs at me in silence. In front of her I went from a man to nothing. She feels bad for me and hates who I become. I am so weak right now, she won't leave. In an epitome to her, no one she wants to be with, I don't blame her. Why won't she run away? That's what I'm waiting for, to come home to an empty house with an open door. I am waiting for this. I am not what she thought I was. I couldn't stop this from happening. I couldn't keep my family safe. All I could do is watch it go.
Good evening and welcome to Gunning for CPS. I am your host, Gunner. Tonight, our topic is going to be on some case law. We're going to review some videos and kind of expose what's legal, what's not legal, and give you guys some reality checks that maybe are not dealing with CPS, but think, oh, well, if you've done nothing wrong, they're going to stay out of your lives. Well, here's the thing. When they want something, they're going to do it, and they have got a whole network of trafficking going on, not following. And the reason I say this is because in calling it trafficking is because when you violate constitutional rights, or due process or any of those particular things, you don't have the proper way of doing things, you're committing a felony and you're breaking the law. We've got a couple of guests that's going to join us. Miss Kim Page will hopefully take and find her way here. I sent her a link. I believe she's on her way, and I believe we have our good buddy, Mr. Big Vinny, with us here this evening. And there's Vinny, Mr. Rico Suave.
Yeah, all fresh and clean out of the shower.
Nice. So, Van, I wanted to start off with a couple things for you guys that I think is very important. Is I want to share this video, and this is going to horrify people. This is a CPS worker going into a hospital with 0 court orders, 0 warrants, anything other than the fact, oh, Miss Kim just popped in. Hello, Kim.
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Doing good. So when we're talking about Kim, we're going to show a video here, and let me set the stage for this. There's a CPS caseworker that goes into a hospital where there's a newborn, and there's no court order, no warrant, no extenuating circumstances whatsoever in a hospital room. Now understand that hospital room is considered where you're residing, the same thing as a hotel. So there's a lot of constitutional rights that people don't realize you have just being in your hotel room. It is not open to the public. You're actually paying for that space, even though your insurance is being billed. That's the same thing as renting a hotel room. And if you're there, you're entrusting these hospitals with the protection of your children. Let me show you this guy that gets so far to get into the room and literally reach for the child as the father pushes away. It's just absolutely, check this out. I mean, it's disgusting.
My child. Bro, don't touch my child. Hey, get him off me.
Get him off of him. What are y'all doing?
Give me your baby. What's up, bro? Don't touch my child, bro. Joe, hands off me. Get your hands off me. The man just put his hands on me. Charges are going against I want to press charges. Then put them against me. Then I'm suing the child department. This lady named Karen Moore, who worked for Rock Island Child Protective Services. Karen came over to the house one day, sat down on the couch, and demanded that I was going to do everything she said. You were going to obey me. Those was her words. Obey me. From farther along, prolonged that, Karen went inside the courtroom. So she took it as far as calling the people and saying that we was beating on our kids. They came back inconclusive. They didn't find nothing because it wasn't true. One of your CPS workers who is not allowed to touch civilians, who is not allowed to put his hands on civilians, put his hands on me and almost injure my child. As his supervisor, you saying it's okay for him to work?
Guys, wow.
Not surprising. They do it all the time.
Did you see the police? Now, I want to show you, this is what the conspiracy is. Here's the conspiracy. There's a RICO case. No showing up, no court order, no warrant. They are required to have it in hand. And the man CPS worker not having the proper documentation in a civil matter has police in the room for a civil matter. This is not a criminal. They have no authority to even be here. There's the other thing, let alone the officers witnessed the crime and never even arrested the CPS worker for assault. For them,
but you know, the thing is,
right
the reason that CPS brings the police with them is they tell the police, we are afraid that this parent is going to do something to keep us from taking their child, and we need you to help us enforce a warrant. And these officers are not educated enough to understand that CPS doesn't even have the authority to ask them for that assistance.
Yep.
It's a lack of education on the part of the police academy. The police academy is not educating these officers properly. And that's one thing that it needs to be done. Herbert and I talked about this about a year or so ago, about trying to develop a program to get into the police academies to educate the officers about what the law says they have the ability and are required to do when it comes to these CPS cases. I have a friend of mine, and I know Herbert has said the same thing, but I have a friend of mine that's a police officer in Alabama. He has actually told me more than once that he has been told that if CPS asks for assistance, you are required to assist them. And when I explained to him the whole situation of why CPS, or the CPS is only a civil case, he looked at me like I had a horn coming out of my head, and he was like, wait a minute, that's a civil situation? I said, yes. So it's the same thing as if you and I got divorced and I called the cops because you won't let me get my you won't let me get my suitcase out of the house. They can't do anything. That they can do is ensure that I don't kill you or you don't kill me in the process of me trying to get my suitcase.
And trying to de-escalate the situation so things can do at a formidable value civilly, so you can operate civilly, is the idea. We're here to keep the peace. That's a
Correct.
peace officer. Absolutely. That is part of their job. Let's keep the peace. Let's work it out the best we can, and nobody gets hurt. They're like a mediator in a certain way. Yes, that is part of their job when it comes to those things.
CPS can only ask for assistance from the police if they have a court order.
Yes.
That's the only time that they can ask for the police to assist, is if they have a court order. But they will bring the police in cases where there is no court order. And when there's a situation where there is no court order, they do not have the authority to make that request. And that's where the cops don't understand the difference.
Well, let's address, I want to address not just the cops in particular. Let's address.
But the cops can't, the cops can't act as their security. They can't. They don't have the legal authority. I agree with you,
but that's not the direction I'm going. What I'm going to talk about here, and this is the subject of this, is of your sheriff, your constitutionally elected sheriff. In every state, I have come to find out with research that every sheriff's office out there has been given a directive by their state and or their governor that when it comes to a situation with children, they are to call CPS in first. That is interference with a constitutionally elected sheriff's sworn duties. That is a violation of your sheriff and the duties he performs to protect and uphold the Constitution, once and foremost, because if it was done properly, they would know and required to have a search warrant, have a court order. So what we're talking about is exactly some of that too, even with police forces, is a lack of education. Sheriffs out there are being bullied by the states to commit or assist with these felonies, and they don't even realize they're doing it. Why? They're not following the Constitution or federal case law. It is very, 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 very well defined in federal case law of what it takes to get inside someone's home. That includes even when you rent a hotel or you're in a hospital. But because you guys out there lack the education and knowledge to defend yourself and have your constitutional rights, things like that come in. That it was a violation. Just coming into the hospital for that stuff is a violation of the Fourth Amendment when he came across there with no court order. Why? Because the wife, because the mother and the newborn were living and residing in there, getting care, and they were paying for the room and or insurance was, whether it was public aid or not, they still have those rights. It's also a HIPAA violation.
Yep.
How did they know that child in there? The privacy. Those are not public places. Those hospitals, generally, unless they are listed as public, they are listed by a private entity open to the public. There's a big difference legally on that. Open to the public, such as Walmart or anything else,
Herbert,
is not the same as your county and city building or your courthouses. And they have blurred this line.
right. And Herbert just said the police will respond if CPS asks for backup. Yes, they will do that, but they're not supposed to. And the reason they're not supposed to is because Child Protective Services is not a citizen. Yep. Child Protective Services is a private business. If they need security detail, just like
for it privately,
Joe Biden,
like everybody else,
just like Fauci, those people want security details. They are required to provide their own.
Exactly.
They cannot utilize the resources that are provided to the
by the American taxpayer by you and me that we pay for.
Yes.
That's a private business, not public.
Yes, that is.
You wonder why?
Exactly.
You wonder why your taxes and your property taxes are going up? Well, how do you think they pay for this, people? Wake up. You wonder why inflation went through the roof? Guess what? They needed a bunch of people to cover for private security. I see them do it for churches in private parking lots.
Yeah, I've seen them do it for construction workers too, where they make them sit there for the construction workers.
Well, now the construction workers, they can be there for safety because they don't have enough proper, under OSHA speculations. I can speak from experience, that being a licensed master electrician, there are certain things when you work on the highways. If you don't have enough beacons or enough cones or enough, the shortage of the distance is a compact, very congested area, they will use law enforcement to kind of bring extra warning from there. But in a way, it can double as like a speed trap zone because, usually in construction zones, they go way down. So it's kind of, And
usually in those cases, Gunnar, though, the police are there not necessarily to protect the construction area, but it's more or less to protect the people from getting into accidents because
getting their attention of the construction going on. It's a way of gathering attention where, once again, they don't have enough vehicles or yellow flashing lights or people paying attention to those things. And automatically it's a psychological game too, because it'll slow down during traffic. I mean, it's something they naturally do. Once again, you're not breaking the law, just following the laws of the road. You've got no reason to take and worry about anything. But there, like I said, there's a lot of gross overstep to where even in this video, you had police. We'll say police or city police because your ultimate authority is your sheriff. It outranks your city police chief, believe it or not. And a lot of people don't know that. Your sheriff is supposed to be there to protect your constitutional rights. Those are the ones you're supposed to be able to go to and say, hey, my rights were violated by a city employee or a state employee or anything. But when was the last time you seen a sheriff arrest a judge, a magistrate, a CPS worker, and all these things? Why? Because they're given instructions by the state, and I have been told in all 50 states that
wait a minute.
Every state.
You better back up on that. You better back up on that judge thing because there has been no judges throughout the United States.
I'm once again, judges. We'll put. How about there you go, Vin? They're actors. Because once again, your state judges, the only thing they have the authority to take and rule on is statute and code.
Yep.
Well, that's a whole different run when you come down to it. Why? Because, and that goes back to your birth certificate. See, they used to issue, and certain religions did it too, especially if you were Catholic. They made before, and guys out there that your parents, you'll understand this, and you'll understand. Comes out of mama, C-section, natural birth, this and that, goes over to a station. They check the baby, clear it out, everything else. You know what they do after that? Ink on the bottom of the feet and stamp that paper. When they do that, that shows it's a port entry. A hospital is considered a port legally. That's not a certificate of live birth. You have to specify when your child is born that you want it to touch soil. Now, a lot of the Catholics, like, The way I was born is I wasn't Catholic. I was just born in a Catholic hospital, but that's the practice of the Catholic Church at the time, was we had clay. So the parents got the first imprint on American soil. You made the clay, that it was done, and it was U.S. soil. Therefore, your feet have legally touched the soil, making you a private U.S. citizen. That classification you hear out there, you've seen the guys of, I'm sure you guys have all seen that thing with I am the living man. Well, all he had to do was produce a certificate of live birth as his form of, here's the proof I'm living. That was the difference between legal documents. And a lot of people, oh, they're the same thing. No, they're not. Look it up federally, because it is not. One means you're entered what a lot of people call the corporation when they put their thing on the paper. That's showing you legally alive in that thing. But if your feet hit American soil first and you have documentation of it, that is a certificate of live birth. There is a legal difference. And that is the big difference. Why? Because there are still a lot of churches, even some beliefs, that do the same thing.
And if there
even
wasn't
Native
a
Americans in
difference,
their practice.
and if there wasn't a difference, explain why the Amish are allowed to not have to get a birth certificate. Explain, here's another one. If it wasn't a difference, then explain why it is that there was a couple, I don't remember exactly when this was. It was a few years back. I want to say like 2020, something like that, 2019, 2018. Terry LaPointe wrote an article about this. There was a couple in the state of Alabama who they refused to get a birth certificate or social security card for their child. And Child Protective Services came in and removed that child from the parents for no reason other than they refused to register them with the state. Then Child Protective Services did not terminate the rights to these parents, just took the child and registered the child to the state. Their child was removed from their care and custody because they were not registered. No other reason.
Now, you know where their lawsuit is right there? That's a First Amendment lawsuit violation. And those people committed a felony. But you got to know how to articulate. You know why? Because it's freedom of religion. Religion doesn't have to line up with the Baptists, the Lutherans, or this and that. It's what I corely believe is my definition of my spirituality and or God. And that is the blanket word of man's definition. And
a church can be created right here. We've got 3 people. We've decided we want to make a church. The 3 of us have decided that we have made a church. Now we are eligible for an EIN number. Now we're eligible for all kinds of governmental
supplements, grants, everything else.
Because the 3 of us have decided to make a church.
You know the funniest church I think I ever heard of is in I'm going to show my age here, and you guys, believe it or not, it was the first church of like weed or marijuana that was founded in like Arizona or California during that whole, before it was legalized thing. They made it a religion. And that was the thing. Everything was within the buildings, and there's nothing they could do because it was freedom of religion. So there's ways around a lot of this stuff, not because you don't know what your constitutional rights are. And here's the core of it. You're not being taught this even from a young age in your public school system. Why? They don't want an educated person to know your rights, because half of this shit would stop. You'd be like this guy in the hospital. Whoa, 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 whoa. You have to provide this. Do you have it? No. He didn't care. He wasn't trained properly. You have got to show up or you can't. I'm not taking your word for shit. The law says you must, under the Constitution, due process. That's a due process violation. When that caseworker showed up with no paperwork, he just violated his constitutional rights. The case died. When you showed up and assaulted somebody, violating their constitutional rights because you didn't have your paperwork in order, yes, that gets thrown out. No different than a criminal case. There's no difference between criminal and civil. in the courtroom with your constitutional rights. They apply in both courts. Both. But the cops were so uneducated. What the hell? They stood by and tried to just, de-escalate and became peace officers. Why aren't you putting the man in cuffs? Where's your court order? This is what we're talking about, bad training by sheriffs and sheriff's deputies that are called into this. You're about to witness a crime. And failure for any sheriff's deputy anywhere in this country to witness a crime and not get involved, becoming a first person point of view, giving you the authority to act because you're in the midst of the situation, is a dereliction of your duty and your sworn oath. Your oath. 100%.
Yep.
And I'm going to call you out for it. I'm sorry, because they're supposed to be there to protect us against tyranny and those things. But now you're going to interfere with a duly elected sheriff? And you've got cops showing up to assist CPS? Listen, I just can't. So, and a lot of our stuff here is, I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to share with you, because you guys are just going to have to bear with me on this. You guys want to take a chance? We're going to try and see if I can get this in a little bit more. See if I can increase the scale here. There we go. Guys, I want you to do this. This is a dissertation. Child Protective Services, the juvenile justice system. This is a federal thing. This was included in our evidence. I want you to read this part, if you can, through here. And I'm going to read this stuff here in the box for you. And this is the law. It says, it's unconstitutional for CPS to conduct an investigation and interview a child on private property. Okay. That's, I'm going to play with the Zoom here a little bit, guys. Sorry about that. Is that better? There we go.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, you have to bear with me. I have one screen. I'm in the midst of some remodeling, so I do have other screens like Darren does, and it will go smoother, but bear with me. I want you to look at this, and we're going to go through this thing together. This is federal case law. This has never been overturned, and this was written by Thomas Dunspitz out of Connecticut. It's a DCS watch group, and it talks and it quotes about, let's go through it here. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth said it best: the government's interest in the welfare of children embraces not only protecting children from physical abuse, but also protecting the child's interest in privacy and dignity of their homes and in the lawful exercise of their authority of their parents. Now, this is quoted quite a bit now, but let's go down here. This is, and we're going to go through this. The decision in the case, and you write this down, Doe et al. Versus Heck et al., there's your number, will affect the manner in which law enforcement and Child Protective Services investigates the alleged abuse or neglect are conducted. The decision of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals found that this practice, no prior consent, in other words, you didn't come in other words, they came to your door, I need to talk to the children, this and that. You didn't call them. You didn't ask for their help. They showed up on your doorstep and are trying to get into your house. I need to talk to the children. Let's cover what the Constitution says and federal case law. It will say, found this practice, the no prior consent interview of a child will ordinarily constitute a clear violation of the constitutional rights of the parents under the 4th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Just that case. According to the court, the investigative interview of a child constitutes a search and seizure, and when conducted on private property where you're staying, hotel room, hospital room, or in your house, without consent, a warrant, probable cause, extenuating circumstances. Probable cause, is there an emergency? National standards, if there's an emergency for CPS, is to call an officer. Imminent danger. They're supposed to back out slowly. Such an interview is an unreasonable search and seizure in violation of the rights of the parents, child, and possibly the owner of the property. Where that's in there, that's the judge talking. And here's the wonderful, check this out. The mere possibility of danger does not constitute an emergency or extenuating circumstance. So it's defining it on what's an emergency and extenuating circumstance that would justify a forced warrantless entry and a warrantless seizure of the child. There's your case law, people. There's your case law. A due process violation occurs. That's your constitutional rights. When a state required breakup of a natural family is found solely on a best interest analysis and is not supported by the requisite proof of parental unfitness, meaning an investigation is not enough to get a warrant to get into your house. Guys, what do you got to say about that? That's case law. Why is this not being followed? Why is our sheriffs not being trained? Why is our CPS workers not being trained? We read it.
Because training them doesn't put money in their pockets. Training them on the right way to do things does not make them any profit.
So it's not in the best interest of the child then. Okay.
No, absolutely not.
There's no crime. If there's a crime, such as what they're alleging is child abuse, that's a criminal act, not a civil matter. If there's not a criminal matter, there's no need for a civil matter. It's gross overstep. It's doing what we'll call it's called having criminal court in civil court. You can't do that. Juvenile court or parent, those type of courts that are there are not meant for adults. They're meant for children. A big boy court and everything else when it comes to that stuff ends up, which is the only thing they can do is just separate you from your children. And where's the crime? What crime have I committed? And if so, has it met the criminal standard? Well, you're in the wrong court. Why are we having, and there's the question I have, why are we having something that is being presented as you've committed a crime, bad enough to commit a crime? That's where you need the thing of help, which is what some of the programs was meant to do for CPS. We're here to help if you want us as an option. I'm having a difficult time. I need help. Not anybody and everybody can call in on you because these states have passed other things to make more money, such as mandatory reporters or those other things. Why does it go to CPS? Why doesn't it go, if you know a crime's happening, that should go to your local sheriff's office that has jurisdiction to investigate a crime. And then you need to be held accountable like anything else, that if you file a false police report, you got a problem. Or I love this little loophole of, hey, we're doing a welfare check. Too bad. Sounds like your problem. Got a warrant to come into my home? No. Hey, with new technology, I'll shoot you a picture or a video. Give me your phone. I'll shoot a video right here. You'll see the child's fine. But I'm not bringing it outside the threshold of that door. Why? That's where your Fourth Amendment sometimes ends. You see why they want you to come to the door or step outside and anything like that? It's coercion. Because they want to get you, your kid, or anything outside. That's like a common buffer zone. But the walls and the threshold of your windows, your doors, and everything else is constitutionally protected. And they will train people to subvert or coerce you to leave that safe place that requires them to have a warrant or a court order. Step outside, they'll snatch them. That's in a common area, not accessible. It's not behind a locked door. Some states define that as your castle. You have to look at that. You have to look it up. What is your state castle doctrine? How does it define it legally? That's what the state gets to take and determine. What is determined your castle? And once again, you have a stand your ground state. You have, and a lot of this, it's tied to your Second Amendment rights too, which is the other thing they don't want you to figure out. Because if they violate that castle, that's what the Constitution says. That's the able, when I have to throw off tyranny, even if I have to do it by force, because you lost everything when you came in illegally. And I'm sorry to tell you that, but there ain't a constitutional anybody that will tell you otherwise. No warrant, no court order, and you come through, I don't care who you work for, you're a common criminal now. Your immunity and your title's stripped when you don't have those things. And that's what this is saying. That goes for case workers. That goes for officers of the law. And here's the scary part. No wonder some of these states want to disarm people. How are you going to take and defend your rights? There's the problem with tyranny, guys, which is why there's so much about it. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe you feel safe. But the idea of the Constitution, and when your government turns on you, you have the ability, a matter of fact, you have the duty, it says, to make those changes. If we can't do it by voting or by making our voices heard or this, that, when something's happening illegally and unconstitutionally, yes, we have the right. That's what it's there for. That's what they don't want to educate you about on your constitutional rights. We don't want to see it come to that. That was the biggest thing that most people say. We don't. We'd rather settle it in the courts. We'd rather have those conversations, but terminate these programs. But when you're talking about case law, guys, we can go out. I mean, this talks about here. This is available. If you guys want this out there, you can. It all goes to this on warrants, never trusting. I mean, the dissertation that this guy wrote was, extraordinary. So much case law in here that it's, talks about it. It talks about government official right here. Let's look right here. This one I think we'll love this one right here. Any government official can be held to know that their office does not give them unrestricted right to enter people's homes at will. You know what that means? You got to have a court order or warrant for each entry. How many times they've been in and out of your house? It don't matter if it's already happened. Guess what? You have a federal case. Deprivation of rights under the color of law. Right there.
And they're merely asking you to let them come into your home still does not give them the right.
Once again, that comes into, and that deals in here. Coming in here, let's go through here. I think this one's right here. You're going to love this one. We got case law on that. North Hudson DCS versus Kohler family is 2000. Appellate court granted emergency application. Goes in here to say that DCS's entry was granted by the lower court because of, who they are. We're allowed to do this and that. Goes on to say, because it was best interest. Says, in other words, the juvenile judge says on whether or not to issue a warrant is a legal one. It's not based on the best interest of the child or personal feelings or suspicions. They have to have hard evidence to get that warrant to come in, which is why it has to go through an Article 3 courtroom. It says the United States Supreme Court has held that many courts may not use a different standard other than probable cause for the issues of such order. In other words, to get that warrant or issue that court order, you got to have probable cause. That's up to the state to bring. And a shoulda, coulda. We got a anonymous call. Doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut it. I mean, let's put it this way, right here. Another recent Ninth Circuit court also held there is no exception to the warrant requirement for social workers in the context of child abuse investigations. And it quotes Calabretta versus Floyd. Remember, we talked about that one earlier. Held that a social worker, oh, this is the one. Guys, you got to pay attention here. Here's your case law. Pay attention. Calabretta also cites various cases from other jurisdictions for its conclusion. Good versus Dauphin County Social Services, Third Circuit, 1989. These have never been overturned. It held that a social worker and a police officer, there's both of them, were not entitled to qualified immunity for insisting to enter her home against the mother's will to examine her child for bruises. The Good case holds that a search warrant or extenuating circumstances, such as a need to protect the child against imminent danger of bodily injury, was necessary for the entry. In other words, without consent, they didn't have it. And the anonymous tip claiming the bruises were even there was a case for insufficient enough or for extenuating circumstances that you can't get a warrant for it. You got to have hard evidence.
You know, that makes sense as to why they just did something in Alabama. Like, I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. They actually passed a law that made it to where social workers no longer have to have a license. So that makes sense as to why they did that.
Let's look at this. At the time this was written, look at this. Perpetrators of maltreatment. Parents, CPS workers. Physical abuse, who wins? Sexual abuse. You mean there, look at the number of that, the difference in this number. Now, this is a research and confirmed number. He even says where he cites it from. National Center for Child Abuse in Washington. Sexual abuse. They're more likely to be sexually abused than when they stay with a parent. Neglect.
7 times more likely to be abused in CPS custody than if they are with alleged unfit parents.
More likely, look at this number, physical abuse.
7.
Look at that. Physically abused, sexually abused. So they run a higher risk just being involved with these programs. Neglect. Boom. Medical neglect. This number is going up right now. According to those things, they're going up even higher than when this was written.
Oh, especially because the children that are being forced vaccinated. Oh, yeah. Danielle, I'm not sure. I know that was something that they passed in Alabama recently, and I've heard that there are several states that are similar, that have similar laws to where social workers don't require a license. But I think you would just have to check each state to be 100% sure. But I do know that is something that recently passed and was written into law back in Alabama.
Now, guys, a lot of what she's talking about is jurisdiction. Make sure some of these decisions that you're reading, they're in the right jurisdiction, or they apply to all jurisdictions. Depends on the type of court. That's why it is. But when it comes to constitutional matters and Supreme Court, it's absolute. There is that applies to everybody, every state, every jurisdiction. And the higher it goes, and once again, and not overturned.
And Tiff, Danielle, the reason I think that they actually did it, I don't think that the person actually that introduced the bill in Alabama, I don't believe that the reason that they did it, this person specifically, was to act on the fact that they could use this whole qualified immunity thing. Mm-hmm. The reason they did it was because they wanted for these social workers to be able to go into schools and be able to have the ability to diagnose children with certain mental illnesses. This was put into place with this whole LGBTQ. Yeah. I think I'm a cat. I'm going to magically grow a penis bullshit. That's when they put them in there. in the schools, but they wanted for these school counselors who did not have social work licenses to be able to diagnose children with certain mental illnesses. They did. I don't think that this person actually went into this with the understanding that allowing that to happen also gave
Listen,
CPS more access to the
exactly.
children to be able to say that these children need CPS intervention.
Yeah, and we'll understand the rules of
I
that
don't know.
Fourth Amendment. That's why it's so important, and they hate homeschoolers so bad. It's because it's protected.
But that's why it's so important. That's why it's so important that these lawmakers, when they do go in and they try to introduce these bills, it is so important that they utilize the law library and the law librarian,
They're
because
not,
every state has a law
and they're not.
librarian who is required to review these laws to ensure the legality, the constitutionality of these laws before they're presented. And what happens is either they're bombarded with them, or the lawmaker that's trying to present it, hey, I'll give you $50. I'll give you $100 if you go ahead and push this through and say you did investigate it, so that they can go ahead and have it pushed through because their agenda is hidden in there.
Listen, that's the problem that we don't have, is people out there that goes, listen, one, the Constitution of the United States is absolute. Every state has signed a contract, that's called your statehood, that says, even in your own state's constitution, all 50 states, defers to the Constitution of the United States of America as the supreme law of the land. When it doesn't meet the sniff test of that alone, which we've proved throughout on this show, personally, other counseling, why it's unconstitutional the way they operate, it's right here. We're showing it to you because they're going past the Fourth Amendment, getting into your homes. It doesn't matter. Where's your court order? Court order has to be very specific. It's not unlimited. If a judge enters as much as they need to get in, they can get in. That judge just violated your constitutional rights. You got to have one, and it has to be specific. What you're there for. Not vague, very specific. All those things, to go through all those things that are required. The judge gives the order of what CPS is to go in and look for, and either honor or limit their requests based on the constitutional rights of everyone that lives in that home.
What they're legally allowed to put on those warrants, to allow them to go in, they have to have some sort of supporting evidence to be able to show that warrant is even legal. They can't just say, hey, Judge
It's
Bob,
valid. We covered that case law.
Go in and check out this child's home just because I think I should be able to, because I'm special. They have to have,
you go in that court,
they have reason to do it.
And here's the sick part. Your judges and magistrates should know this, because it's part of their oath to uphold the Constitution. And matter of fact, when they see it to dwindle, it's even said they're to run to the aid of the Constitution to make sure it's followed. So why aren't you judges and magistrates out there going, where's your warrant and court order? Because here's why. Here's the reason why. Because if you prove that, there's a thing out there called what? Fruit from a poisonous tree. It means their case goes away. They committed a felony and their case should go away. But what's the first thing you hear if you do bring it up? They don't have jurisdiction. We don't deal with those things in our courtroom. That's a term that I've heard several times, and I've heard personally. So you just admitted to losing jurisdiction. Then why are we continuing? But they do, because they figure you're dumb and you're not going to do anything about it, or you're going to file the proper paperwork and say, change of jurisdiction to federal. Why? There's a constitutional matter. You're right. This court doesn't have jurisdiction. Then you just lost authority. Nothing can continue. But see, you don't know that. And that's why they fast pace this thing so fast. And when you get these family attorneys and I hate to say this, a lot of you are uneducated family attorneys. Why? Because you're supposed to change jurisdiction when they enter without a warrant. But you don't have the license, do you? Do you refer your client over to somebody that can handle it federally? Because it demands a change of jurisdiction. Because there's a constitutional rights violation and fruit from the poisonous tree applies. If that would stop there, and these attorneys were properly to just look for that little bit, Your Honor, I move for dismissal, violate, deprivation of rights under the color of law. We're going to make a submittal. The court, prove it. Where's your court order or your warrant? You have one? Then we're done here. Why? Because it's the first thing you did was commit a felony. It doesn't matter whether they show up and they say, oh, well, can I come in? I need to do this report. Fourth Amendment is clearly there for a reason to say, no, you will not. You are required as a caseworker, and it says it within this document, that everything else is coercion. You got to have a court order, a warrant, or an emergency. You don't have those. They can't invite you in because they didn't have intent. You knocked on their door. There's the thing that it goes through in that case law. Intent. A caseworker shows up anonymously and knocks and doesn't make an appointment, or, hey, I need to come over. Where here's the other part. Under contract law, you got to have full disclosure of what you're doing. So where's your form that says, I waive my constitutional rights of Fourth Amendment to come into my home, CPS, DCS, DSS, required to have it, even when a cop talks to somebody without an attorney. You got to have it on film to prove they waive their rights. Otherwise, it's on you and your case is done.
Yep.
But you got to get it into the right jurisdiction, the right court. Let's cover just a little bit more here. The Ninth Circuit Court, further opinion in Wallace versus Spencer, that because the swing of every pendulum, we'll go through here, you guys can read this, the fact that the subject crime may be heinous, whether it involved children or adults, does not provide cause for the state to ignore the rights. No matter what it is, you can't ignore those constitutional rights under any circumstance, even with child abuse or anything. The Constitution must be followed. Do it the right way. The state the right to accuse any other parties. Right there, it says it right there. Does not provide cause for the state to ignore the facts. Here, read it, guys. Otherwise, serious injustice may come. In cases of alleged child abuse, governmental failure to abide by constitutional constraints may be serious long-term consequences for the child and indeed the entire family. It's talking about the psychological abuse when you don't follow the law, of the damage it does that all of you are experiencing. It just goes on. But Vinny, let's talk about yours. Where was your Fourth Amendment? Did you get warrants? Did they get court orders? Where was these things? Talk about entry, what they did, how they come in. Tell us, refresh our memories, our viewers' memories of what's going on, how they come in. Kim, you've got cases. What's the worst case you've ever heard on entry?
Mine was pretty screwed up. They actually arrested me so they could take my kids. They created a situation where my children were dependent because they placed me under arrest for something that they had no jurisdictional authority to act on. I had a ticket that was past due being paid, that I had paid on, but apparently there was some sort of computer system error, and the county that arrested me, there was not even a warrant. That's the thing. The county that arrested me wasn't even the county in which the ticket was, where the ticket was written. It was in a completely different county. But they arrested me claiming that I had a warrant for my arrest for this misdemeanor ticket. And they didn't have the authority to arrest me on a misdemeanor ticket, and they used that in order to take my children. When they tried to come into the home, they actually the worker literally hit the door, hit me in the face with the door because I wouldn't let her come in. She slammed the door in my face and hit me with it. Other things I've seen is them going to the hospital and taking the child from the hospital. I actually know that there was one mother that literally she was breastfeeding, and they literally pulled the baby off of her breast to take the baby from her. Yeah.
This is what we're talking about, and knowing your case law, when to do it and where to say it, throughout it, is you're going to tie those judges. And if they don't adhere to these case laws and to these rulings, they're a violation of their oath, because all judges and magistrates of the state are subject to federal case law and the Constitution. It comes back through here, contrary to the assumptions of hundreds of social workers, the Ninth Circuit Court held that the Fourth Amendment applies just as much to a child abuse investigation as it does to any criminal. Wait, criminal? You mean they're fighting in civil court? They ain't supposed to be. Because it's a criminal act for child abuse. It's not a civil matter. It's a criminal matter. Social workers are not exempt from the requirements of the Fourth Amendment when they act alone, and they're not exempt from its rules when they're accompanied by a police officer. Police officers are not exempt from the requirements, even if all they do is get the front door open, your screen door. As soon as they open the screen door, there's your threshold definition. Opened my door, my screen door, put my foot in the door. You're on the threshold. You just committed a fourth. I didn't even talk to you yet, and you're already broke the law by putting your hand on my door, my first locked door. That's a felony.
Yep.
That's a felony, guys. And I know a lot of people that happened to me.
If you have a fence around your property, that fence, that gate is the first threshold.
Which is why a lot of cities will tell you what? No fences in the front yard. Wonder why? Brings that border closer to your front door. Let's look at this here. When consent is not consent. If a police officer says, if you don't let us in your home, we'll break down the door. A parent who then opens the door has not given, this goes for CPS and cops, did not give free and consent. If a social worker says, if you don't let me in your home, I'll take away your children. A parent who then opens the door has not given free and voluntary consent. If a social worker says, I'll get a warrant from a judge, or I'll come back, I'll call the police if you don't let me in. What does that say? Negate consent. Any type of communication which conveys the idea to the parent that they have no realistic alternative but to allow entry negates any claim that entry was lawfully gained through the channel of consent. That's called intimidation and coercion, folks. And that's a Fourth Amendment violation. And fruit from the poisonous tree 100% applies. If you don't believe me, take your case, change jurisdiction like several other people. My numbers are growing all over the place by changing jurisdiction because you had a Fourth Amendment violation from the very thing. And the burden then is on the state. Show me the court order or warrant that you came into my house. And where's the evidence they came into your house? What did we find? What did Kim and I were sitting there kicking around? You know what every state has? A fact system that the CPS workers are required to record it. They record their own crime, their own felony. I entered the house. You just admitted on a state document you committed a felony. And these judges that aren't catching this, or magistrates, you're just as guilty for not running to the Constitution, because the evidence was right in front of you and you didn't do a constitutional rights audit on the case, as you're required to do every single time.
Danielle, have you thought about hiring your own guardian? You know that you don't have to accept an appointment. You can hire your own. Parents don't realize that. Parents don't realize that when a guardian ad litem is appointed by the court, you do not have to accept that appointment.
They're supposed to know. They're supposed to notify you that you have that right as well. Did you? No. Guess what?
Yes,
your constitutional rights were violated.
Yep. You do not have to. I mean, that's like when you tell them that you can't afford an attorney, and they give you an attorney that you don't mesh with. You can tell them that this attorney is not going to work for me. They can't force you to use the attorney they want you to use.
Danielle, you can use whoever you want.
If they have multiple attorneys that are available, they have to say that these are the ones that are available. They just can't go through a rotation because it's now Sally's time to represent somebody.
But here's the other thing. A guardian ad litem does not have to be an attorney. It can be anybody that goes through that.
It depends on the state. It depends on the state. In some states, they require the guardian ad litem to be an attorney. I understand federally they don't, but from a state perspective, some states require a guardian ad litem. The title guardian ad litem is only given to those who are licensed to practice law.
Once again, that's a discrimination.
So you're going to have to,
Kim, you'll notice what you said. Federally, it does. The state doesn't have the right to narrow that. Right there is a constitutional right violation, people. Federally, you can do this.
So you have to know that.
There you go, guys. Knowledge is power. You hearing this?
You have to know that. You have to know that in order to be able to argue it. But the thing is that it wouldn't be your argument to have. It would have to be the guardian ad litem that was being denied the ability to be one because of the lack of the license. So, like, if you wanted your aunt to be the guardian for your child, your aunt could actually file the violation of their rights by denying them the ability to be one because of the requirement of them being an attorney.
Using your case number as a reference for federal thing to compel that lower court to do something. Well, here's the thing. While you're waiting on that, the state can't do shit. CPS can't move. They can't adopt your child. They can't this, they can't that. It freezes. If they don't freeze, you go back to the federal judge that's working on the ruling or has issued the ruling, and that's contempt of federal court, and they will be arrested. Guaranteed it. Federal judge don't play when you don't follow the rules, and they don't give a crap what state you're from, even if they're in the same state. Federal law is federal law, baby. They don't care what your state says. So there's something, exposure, Kim and Benny, or let's put that on our list when we go for the big thing, because that is a constitutional rights violation. Why? I mean, you're violating the constitutional right of this and that. Hey, I believe this person's of good interest. That's not for the court to decide. Why? Because the parents have the unalienable right until the age of 18. And once again, and the thing of being in civil court is one thing. It's not criminal court. So you can't argue that I don't have a chance to do this because I'm not in criminal court. We're in civil court. So that rule doesn't apply that I don't get a say in the matter. That's a bunch of crap. We're not in criminal court. If we're in criminal court or there's a criminal case pending, great. But if that federal case gets thrown out, that means you got to revert back. And it means nothing from the very beginning. That's where your lawyers are supposed to be getting paid to track this. Oh, wait, my criminal case got dismissed. Why am I still with CPS? Because they didn't file the proper paperwork. Yeah. Hey, I won my case and my name's free, but they adopted out my kids. Go back, because of the decision they made to take your kids and the authority they had was based off that criminal case. If there's no criminal case or you're not guilty, it's supposed to go back the way it was before it ever happened. That's the law. CPS doesn't get to continue when there's no case in a criminal case because they don't have the authority. A civil matter, no, it was not guilty. You can't enter any of that evidence. Here's the irony of everything. Why is CPS, the government that's never had a child in its life, record, actors, anything else, this entity known as CPS, DSS, DCS, whatever, has never had a child, let alone the people they send out. No clue with children. I've raised 3. You're trying to come to me and tell me that you know better than I do, your program or your brochure put together by experts. How many of them have ever raised a damn child? How many times have you stayed up when that child was a baby with, colic? Baby screaming all night, still had to go to work and this, that. Where was the government or anything with any of that? You weren't there. And you could care less. So what gives you any right if you're not willing to make the sacrifice financially, emotionally, psychologically of having children and being parents for you to come in and have the right to tell me how to do that? The very basis of it is unconstitutional because we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How that's defined is not for them to do. My happiness is defined. It's protected under God's law. Children, reproduction. We are stepping across the line of government, of contract law, of things that pertain to God's law. It takes 2 people to create a child, right? Or a donor, one way or another. It still comes from somebody. Egg, sperm, whatever, even at banks. We have the ability now to take those things and put those things fertilized in somebody that they're not even a participant. There's a name for it. Somebody, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. surrogate mother. You have a surrogate mother. The mother is enabled. She can have eggs, but there's something wrong with her reproductive system. She can't carry to term. They have a surrogate. This happens a lot with people that are infertile. But there's unique things about it that the government never goes through any of those things. But to come in and say, we want your children, even so far as every state right now, if your government representatives and lawmakers take this economy and just make us a third world country with something they do, you realize right now the way the laws are written in every state, every single one of you that lost your house, lost your job, and everybody's going through it. Imagine the Great Depression in this country that happened. The government would swoop in and take all of your kids because something that your government officials have destroyed our economy. We have no control over that. That's why we send representatives to run things the way that we can make a living, to support our families, and we entrust that to help us keep those things running, but within the constitutional rights of everybody. But if they crash this, even if on purpose, you want to talk about the biggest way to take control, crash this economy for a president. Then CPS comes in and swipes all your children. 4 years. 4 years, that's all it would take. The right situation, the right president, the right Congress, Senate, crash this economy. CPS now has all the children in the country. Because you're unfit. Because they caused the crash. They're the government. We can come in now. You're an unfit parent. You don't have a roof. They did it in North Carolina after the flood. Tell me they don't do it. They did it after a natural disaster, people. I can tell you because I'm real close to North Carolina. Not even an hour or so away. It's true, the stories out there of what's going on, and you can go through it. I've seen it. Firsthand seen it. It's disgusting. Came in. We're here to help like they're supposed to be. What do you need? Baby formula? Diet? Man, you guys just lost everything. How can we help? We're from CPS. What do you need for the baby? Shelter? Can we work with another organization and get people that have kids shelter? But you know what the scariest thing was? And you guys remember hearing about this. When they were trying to cut in that road, they were looking for a guy supposedly with a gun that was at an airport. That the guy come back and started to report that there's a plane full of kids disappearing, was the report, and all of a sudden he's gone. Why? Think of it in terms of money, the most devious shit you could ever think of. These children now don't exist. There's no record, there's no body. A natural disaster happened, an act of God. We now have hundreds of kids for the black market. Don't tell me it's not happening. There's things, there's videos I've seen. There's people I've talked to showing this stuff. Guys, and they silence them up and they go after these people. Trust me, they don't want you to know this. Matter of fact, I was talking to somebody from Arizona or New Mexico. I said, yeah, we heard the thing about North Carolina was nothing but propaganda and lies by the Trump administration. I go, are you freaking kidding me? There's so much about that it stinks all the way up to the dam. Guys, I don't get it. What happened to our humanity? All this for $1 or for power or control or this and that? Where did our sense of humanity go to? Sense of caring about another human being over anything else? I mean, that's scraping bottom of the barrel to me as far as a human. That you make your money, and just because it has the label of a state protected by the state or anything else, you're right. These programs were created with good intentions, but somebody found a way to make it really evil, really fast.
No, CPS was never created with good intentions. I was talking to a friend of mine who had a conversation with a extremely high level FBI agent, and she made the comment to him, I think CPS was designed to traffic children. Mm-hmm. And his response was, that's exactly why they were created.
Listen, we can do a whole show.
They weren't created to
hold on. Now let me explain why I said that. Because the Social Security Act of 1935 was set up for foster care system for kids that had lost one or both parents during the war efforts of World War I and World War II. This was privately done out of New York City originally to care for the orphans.
That was an orphanage.
Orphanages, yes.
Those were orphanage
well, programs. They got federal funding to the Social Security Act of 1935. That then proceeded to the Department of Human Services expanding, even into the point up to where the states ended up creating sanitariums, because the social factor was people that had Down syndrome, autism, or just too violent and couldn't fit into natural society were deemed or fit to a state hospital. Now, Kim, you're going to love this one. Not only that, even during the thing that it was so perverted that some men sent their wives to these sanitariums because they wouldn't obey or this and that. Now, these are some abusive people. Let me just put that out there. That's not right. And the devices that came out of it was basically masturbating them like crazy or using sexual things to make their minds right. Guys, this is documented proof. Ben's going to say goodnight to us. Ben, thanks for joining us. We're going to wrap up here in a little bit.
Yeah, good night, guys. Have a great night.
Show.
I will see you guys all tomorrow. I was up early plowing this morning, so I've had a long day.
Appreciate you, tilling that earth, Vinny. Keep at it.
Yeah. Later, guys.
Later. So,
see you, Ben.
Guys, we're talking about a whole lot here that it's disgusting. It started off with good intention to take care of orphans and try and place them. And that's with people that if you didn't have family, that's where that familiar thing come in with CPS. There was even guidelines for that of saying, listen, if you got family members, go. But if your family members didn't want you, your grandparents, your aunt, your uncle, second cousin, whatever it was, great uncle, all that extended family, now they've destroyed the family. So there's not a lot of familiar. People don't have strong families anymore.
Right.
Why? Because they're in here destroying it. They're going after the families, the very core of it. Why? Because then we get access to the children. We can program them. We can give them, we can do these things. Those sanitariums, they were running human drug trials on human subjects. They were making profit off of it. Then when they shut down the sanitariums under the Ronald Reagan administration, we lost all that money. You imagine the millions and billions of dollars state sanitariums were closed down, and that's where they were gaining their money, and the society didn't care. They got away with it. They were raping these people, even young children. Pedophilia was in these sanitariums by caseworkers. It's documented under the International Association of Down Syndrome. They did a whole exhortation on it, international, with the evidence using court cases. It's all out there. Guys, they went from that to now we can't have them in a sanitarium, but we know they're a danger and we can convince society these people are messed up. Well, let's just in-service them in homes. Now we get into the home.
Yep.
No, you don't. These are where the states need to line up with the Constitution and respect the Fourth Amendment. And you're not. If there is probable cause, so be it. If it meets the threshold. But 90% of CPS cases do not. And the first thing they do is illegal entry, which if your case was handled properly, the judge would have looked and said, I see you went into their home. Where's your court order? Where's your warrant? Because I didn't issue it. Am I missing something in my paperwork? If not, judge.
Well, how about the cases where state law is explicit in saying that they're not allowed to take so if mom has another child in the middle of a case being open on an older child, they're not allowed to take that other child simply because there's a case open on another child. And they do that all the time. I mean, Amy's got that exact situation going on right now. The reason her two younger children were taken is because there was a case open on her older child.
And listen, even if your case is farther along, closed or anything, and you still had deprivation of rights under the color law, they started the case by committing that felony of coming into your house with no court order warrant. There is no statute of limitation for deprivation of rights under the color of law. You can take them to federal court, get a ruling. You can do an appeal on your case all the way to the Supreme Court, change jurisdiction because the state does not have the authority. And you ask the judge if there was no court order, no warrant available, or no emergency, or no documentation thereof. And that's where it started. Is that a constitutional rights violation under deprivation of rights under the color of law? And does fruit from a poisonous tree then would qualify for anything under any case, under any circumstances, criminally or civilly? That's how you state this. Does that mean fruit from a poisonous tree doctrine applies? And I'm going to guarantee you that what you're going to get back from the federal court is you're absolutely right, which means everything you just went through was illegal and unconstitutional and a violation of your rights and a violation of due process, because it should have stopped when you made the lower court aware I have a constitutional rights violation, or when they read the evidence of the facts report, they should have stopped and done their due diligence and job to make sure the Constitution was followed. That's part of their requirement for their job and their very oath. It should be the first thing they should be looking for beyond all the other paperwork, no matter what the case is giving it a review for its constitutionality, and they never do it, which is why every single one of them have violated your rights and should not be sitting on the bench. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
It's true.
But I'm 100% correct. I'm 100% constitutionally sound. And there ain't a federal court out there that would take and disagree with me, because that case law has never been overturned.
But you know, the thing is, Albie, the courts do not fail us. That's the thing. The courts are not failing us. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. What they're supposed to do is they're supposed to screw with us. They're supposed to keep us uneducated. And then because we don't have the education to know that they're screwing with us, they're supposed to bend us over backwards and screw us 9 ways to Sunday. That is what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to protect us. That's the federal courts are the only ones that are actually designed to protect anybody other than themselves.
Which
The lower courts have they're not protecting us. They're only protecting themselves. That's what they're designed to do.
You want to stop an ongoing case? Change the jurisdiction to federal, address your constitutional rights issues, and understand what fruit from a poisonous tree says. And when the federal judge issues and says, yes, that's a Fourth Amendment violation, and if that's the first thing that happened, then yes, you have fruit from a poisonous tree would apply. Therefore, there is no case. And you'll ask the judge exactly that in federal court. And they hate, I'm telling all of you this. Why? Because the lower court has no authority whatsoever to interfere with your filing in a federal thing for civil rights. And it freezes their case. You are only responsible to notify the court, even if it's your first time for your initial hearing. Constitutional rights violations, Your Honor, I'm putting the court on notice. I'm filing federally. Watch how quick your case freezes. Even if they've got your kid, it freezes.
You can do it even if your rights have been terminated. You still can go back and do this. And the federal
even if it happened to you 20 years ago, you can do it and still file. No statute of limitation.
None. And the other thing that there's no statute of limitations on is subject matter jurisdiction. They can overturn a case 20 years later for them having a lack of subject matter jurisdiction. Now, what subject matter jurisdiction is, I'm going to give you just the most basic example. It's difficult to understand completely, but the most basic of definition or way to explain it. When you go to court for a traffic ticket, you will never hear a felony case being heard in that traffic court because that's municipal court. Municipal court only has the legal authority to hear certain types of cases that are within their subject matter jurisdiction. So you have the municipal courts, you have the circuit courts, you have the district courts, you have the appellate courts, you have the Supreme Courts of the state, you have the Supreme Court of the United States. Each court has a specific number or a specific limit on the types of cases they're allowed to hear, classification of cases they're allowed to hear. And if they do not have, if a prosecutor tries to bring a felony case before a magistrate over a municipal case, that magistrate does not have the jurisdictional authority to hear that case. And so they are required by law to bump it up to the next court. If they do not do that, then 10 months later, 10 years later, 100 years later,
violation of due process.
You can show where they did not have the jurisdiction, and any decision that was made on that case is automatically null, void, 100%. Now, they can choose to go back and try it or hear it in the proper jurisdiction. But anything that already happened, anything that already happened, they have to overturn. It has to go back to the very beginning, to the day before it was filed.
And if your kids have already aged out, and at the same time, if your kids have aged out, they still get, here's the thing. Now they have a voice in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. Now they have a voice, whether or not that's even there. There's a big difference. You parents, don't give up. When we say don't give up, you can get to the point once the kids turn 18 and go realize my constitutional rights are violated. Well, guess what? Now your kids can testify. They can testify to the damage and horrors and everything they went to because they weren't able to when they were younger. And what it was like growing out without a parent. And it was a bunch of crap. And how those people, they realized later how they were, coerced by CPS. Hey, we've got cases where CPS workers are offering drugs for testimony. Hey, I'll give you some weed, kid. Hey, I'll give
Oh,
you a
they
drink.
took
I'll give you a bottle.
my daughter was pregnant when they took my children, and she was 17 in Alabama. The age of majority is 19. So she was pregnant. They actually started proceedings to be able to take her child away from her for no reason other than the fact that she was going to give birth while she was in foster care. And they ended up finding out that my granddaughter had some birth defects. Now, my daughter had no idea that they'd started proceedings
Right.
against her to take her child.
Oh no, that's
But
lack
they,
of, not serving people, lack of information. Those are things
right.
required. Well, you're
And
in
the only
state's
way I
custody.
found out about it, is because the guardian ad litem that was on the case, she actually asked to be taken off my daughter's case because now CPS was a case against her regarding unborn child. I'm not sure how exactly you can abuse or neglect an unborn child, especially when we allow abortion up until moments after birth. How exactly you abuse an unborn child, that's beyond me. But when my daughter went to the doctor and they found out that my granddaughter had some severe birth defects that were going to require several surgeries after she was born, CPS immediately stopped the proceedings to go after her child, had her emancipated, had her get married to the baby's father, who, by the way, they accused of sexually abusing my daughter and providing her with drugs and alcohol. All of a sudden, they're having her get married to him because they don't want to have anything to do with this baby that's going to cost them shit tons of money to have this baby fixed so that it's sellable. And then they told my daughter if she had anything to do with me, they would take her baby from her.
Wow. Guys, now you wonder why
They
they're after
forced
your
her to
Second
testify.
Amendment. Do you realize under the law and under the Constitution, this is why I'm so pro Second Amendment, because of things like this, because when they cross this line, that's what the Second Amendment's for. And then you sort it out, because then they have to prove it. Where's this? Where's this? Where's this? Now why? Because it's a criminal case. Go ahead. I'll go ahead and go through the grinder. But first thing I'm going to do is my constitutional rights were violated. Fourth Amendment right was violated. He entered the home. Guess what? All I have to do is I feared for my children's safety. Why? They said they were here to take my children. Got a court order or warrant? No. Bam. And I'm not ensuing violence. I'm telling you what your constitutional rights are, because there's no warrant or court order. You make that decision for yourself. I'm not ensuing that. I'm telling you what the law says. Your Second Amendment, you have a right to defend yourself, even to, if it comes down to lethal, if they won't stop. You saw in that video we shown earlier, if that man, I wonder why they don't allow weapons in a hospital room. I'll tell you what, I would have shot that dude square in the head. Where's your court order warrant? Because it's not present here in the presence of cops. The cops didn't do nothing. So who was there to protect me and my rights? That would be the question that gentleman I would be asking, to be honest. What the hell are you doing? Where's the court order? Where's the warrant? No, you're just going to let this guy come in. What gives him the authority? Not the state. Under the Constitution, what gives him the authority to take my child? They don't have it. That child is mine under God's law. I created that. You didn't. How can a child be born? And here's the beautiful one, how the hospitals. We uncovered that on this show. Nurses telling people, giving them epidurals, and then testing the mom and the baby afterward, and taking the baby based off of hospital. And once again, that's illegal search and seizure. Running a blood test without that. They're not supposed to. You got to have consent. If it's not for medical health, you got to fill it out on your hospital. For my personal health only, I do not give consent. You can write that on those forms for the hospital when you enter. I do not give consent, because they're not going to give you that box to check. Once you make it notice, that hospital is viable. It's liable. I do not give consent
And them
to that. The
taking
same
your
rules
them
apply to
taking
a
your
hotel
blood
room.
without your consent, them taking your blood without your consent is actually considered assault. Yes, it is specifically documented that is used for the purpose of treatment, not just
You got to have a court
an
order,
investigative
baby.
process.
There was a nurse that was shown that went viral
Yep.
one time that said, "No, I won't draw his blood. You got to show me a court order." And they tried to arrest the nurse. Well, that cop lost his damn job in a fucking heartbeat. I don't care. Yeah, she went to jail.
She actually ended up going to jail for that. That was not just a threat. They threatened to arrest her.
No.
She actually ended up going to jail. And Christopher, also, notaries have to take an oath. Notaries are also one of the people that have to take an oath, and they also have to get a bond.
Listen,
I'm a notary.
There's a lot of power in a notary. Don't downplay it. Yeah, put them on notice, Danielle.
What'd you say, Gunner?
Yes, Danielle is asking her. She has to put them on notice to file federal. If you have an open case and you're not in between, you're actively involved. Yes, you put the court on notice. It's a simple notice to the court. Give it to that judge, and then you go across the street. We'll say across the street to federal court, and you file it under the right subject matter or civil rights or whatever else is there. Follow that format. If you're going to do it yourself, you file it pro se, pro juris. What that means is all that fancy language, you have to bring it down to a common man's language in the courtroom. Is all it says. I have a right to represent myself. We're not dealing with legalese here. We're going to talk common law and common language, is what that says. It's striking them saying, because that's where they get you and say, well, you're practicing law without a license. Not when you claim yourself as being pro juris and pro se, both of them. It means I'm representing myself. I have enough knowledge, but you're going to talk the way that, basically the way you would talk to a jury. There's the difference between a federal, especially with that when you deal with a jury trial versus one without, because then it forces the attorneys or whoever's this representing this is to speak a language enough for the common man or for the jury to understand or comprehend, to make a ruling. They can't come up with a fancy word of this and that, and they look at it and they go, what the hell is that?
Danielle, your son was 17 when we went in state custody. So let me just, and I'm gonna have to get off here in a minute because I'm gonna be up early for work tomorrow. But I want to
all good
hit on this one real quick. If you is taken into state custody within 6 months of them becoming age of majority, your child has the legal right to file for emancipation. Have your child, or actually it's within a year, excuse me, not 6 months, within a year of becoming age of majority in your state, give your child the documents to file for emancipation. Help them fill them out. Let them fill them out. Take them to the courthouse and file them for them. At that particular point, the CPS case regarding them has to stop. And the emancipation process must be followed through with before the CPS case legally can be picked up, because emancipation allows your child to be legally considered an adult, and Child Protective Services has no authority over an adult. So it has to stop the case. So if your child, there's 2 states, Alabama, and I want to say the other one's Arkansas, that it's 19 is the age of majority. It is 18 in every other state. It's 19 federally. If your child is within a year of that age of majority, they can file for emancipation.
Yep. 100%. And understand this too. Not only, let's explain that, go even further as far as CPS. That goes for being in public school. Your child is considered an adult in this state here. It's 18. When you're 18, you're considered an adult. What does that mean? You don't fill out permission slips or anything else. And when the school comes back, we have to have it for a parent. No. That child is now legally able to be drafted and can vote.
Mm-hmm.
That is considered in the eyes of the law. And you look at that school, if you've got an issue with that too, you have to have that argument. Which my kids, the way their birthday fell, some of their senior year, they were 18. Well, I was teaching them to be an adult. It's not my problem anymore. I'm not legally liable for anything. Child's 18 in the eyes of the law. And you go to a federal court, I don't give a shit what the state court says. Federally says that child's an adult. If you got to, if that child can be drafted and can vote, ain't no way in hell. No, you can't change the rules. You can't.
Right.
18,
All right,
you're
Gunner, I've
considered
got to get
adult.
off
There's
for
a lot of
tonight.
stuff. Thanks, Kim,
I got
for
to get out
joining
of
us.
here. Yep.
Guys, we've had a great show tonight. Thanks again, Kim, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See you later, guys.
See you guys. So, guys, what we've come to is we've covered a lot tonight. We hope this better educates you on case law, your rights, what's right, what's wrong, what's supposed to happen the way it's supposed to. And yes, and understand this, that yes, all states have to follow this federal ruling, whether they like it or not. So here's the thing, guys. That's what it comes down to, is that it's going to have to come down to this. We have to follow the Constitution. No matter what it is, who it is, they're all obligated to follow, and they're not. And know your rights. Don't give up, parents. Guys, if you've got issues where you're feeling suicidal, there are support groups. Check out one of my previous shows that we talked with Sam. Every other week we take and deal with mental health. And then every other week we deal with case law. I hope this has helped you guys. If you guys need this, just contact our show, The Punisher, anything like that. Vinny, that particular thing we put up tonight, it's available. If you need it personally, email me at expo.cps.tn at gmail.com. I can send that directly to you, or find a way to get me a message if you get to Darren or any of the group. We'll be more than happy to share that with you. Guys, thanks for checking us out. Get support. You're not alone. This fight, we're taking it to them. We're going to do a lot of great things. Things are coming up. And this is not all talk. We are taking some action. We are in the process of putting the finishing touches. And then you're going to play a game of fuck around and find out with the worst thing you could have ever done. Parents, let alone us Gen Xers, now we're going to hold you back because we want back our country. We went back to the Constitution, and we want our kids back home. And for this to stop and never happen to our kids or our grandkids or anybody else in the future. Thanks again, guys. And don't forget to hit the like and follow to watch our next showing, and share our show with your friends so they can get the support, knowledge, and everything else that they need to fight their fight, and fight it in the right jurisdiction and in the right court, and educate themselves. Even if they don't have kids yet, you need to get parents, people that are thinking about kids, to understand this so they can be educated if they ever encounter these people. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel, Sunday nights, 9:30, until the show ends. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, guys.
Kids, bring them home now. Constitution, strong blood won't lie. No more corruption, let freedom fly. Loud and on fire, won't back down. Keeping the faith here in this town. Apple pie dreams under a southern sky. American man with the fierce battle cry. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with the strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Fierce in heart and steady in soul. Family communities united make the broken whole. Justice for all, America strong. Sing this anthem loud, sing our song. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Calling for CPS off our land. For family truth with a strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken